I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to A Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp and I'm Giles Edwards. Today I've caught Faizan Ali. Our industry loves to chat all things strategy and creative, often overlooking the right honourable role of account management across Adland, the gateway drug for many past call to action guests. Currently account director at VML he is a loud and proud advocate for these often unsung heroes. Having cut his teeth at Saatchi, JWT and Hogarth worldwide, he can often be found sharing advice on how to calm storms, massage egos, and help sell the work. Faizan says without account managers, there wouldn't be any sanity in an agency. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me on the podcast.
No problem at all. Right, 7 quickfire questions to warm up. Mac or PC?
Mac.
Twitter or LinkedIn?
Ooh. LinkedIn.
Account manager or astronaut?
Account manager.
Kiwis or pineapples?
Kiwis.
Creating ads or selling ads?
Selling ads.
Nice. 2 more. Giving feedback or asking questions?
Asking questions always.
Nice. Right, last one. Would you rather post a selfie on LinkedIn or unironically say fidgetal?
Selfie. I think selfie would be fine. Nobody would notice.
Okay, wicked. Nice one, Faizan. Well, thanks for joining us. We like to celebrate routes that guests have taken in their career to get where they are now. So can you start by telling us about your first ever job and then what was your first advertising job?
So my first ever job was at a call center, which was some kind of a weird and shady telemarketing company. We were supposed to sell some service that I don't even remember. I honestly worked there for half a day only. It was just a wrong place, and I didn't know about it. So I went in the morning and I left in the afternoon. And this was even before I went to the university and even the college as well. So it was a long time back. I don't remember clearly, but I think I didn't tell anyone that I'm leaving. And I just quietly left. So I'm sure they're still waiting for me that I'll come back one day.
But yeah, they still think you work there.
Yeah. So I don't think, that would be counted as a first job, but I wanted to tell you as well because, this is a safe space, right? Yeah. So then my first ever job was while I was doing my bachelor's. Me and a friend of mine, we started a social media agency called Social Cell. And this was like 11, 12, I think 13 years ago. And you have to keep in mind that we knew nothing about social media at that time, but we were starting an agency. So all we knew about was a bit of Facebook. And at that time, this was in Pakistan, so it was one of the most popular social media platform. Anyway, we did some digging and we realized that there are mostly big digital agencies that are focusing on medium to big brands, and not many were reaching out to small, tiny brands with tiny budgets. Uh, and you might laugh about it, but we learned the fundamentals of marketing very recently at that time. So we use the concept of segmentation and targeting. You might have heard of these, right? Segmentation. So
Yeah. You said you don't know anything, but for many, you clearly did.
So we were only reaching out to a small set of clothing brands in a very specific area of the city. So we knew who we were after from day one. And at that time, we didn't even have our own website. We were studying. We didn't have any money. We literally were using our own private Hotmail account. So we were purely winging it at that time. uh, anyway, we got a few clients, and we used to post and advertise on Facebook, which was super fun because it was early days, and we were also learning and struggling at the same time. So we did a few photo shoots as well. I remember I was the photographer, and we used to borrow the camera from another friend for shoots. And the best part, which I still think, is that we never called ourselves co-founders and CEOs. So I was the kind of a planner, which I still don't know what that is, and he was the creatives, because we didn't want to give the impression that we are the only two people working on it. So it's like a big team behind us as well.
Nice. And did you say that was whilst you were at university, or was this after university?
We were in university at that time. Yeah, we were studying.
Fantastic. And your course presumably was marketing related.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you could at least take your learnings from your degree or your bachelor's and apply that as you were kind of forming this agency and having those conversations with clients.
Yeah, we were applying live every session we were learning, and we were trying to bring that to the table as well. So that was really nice. We made some money as well. We learned a lot, and then I don't know what was on my mind. I left our billion-dollar agency and started my career at JWT. Yeah, because at that time I was reading about JWTs and Ogilvy's and Leo Burnett's, and I always wanted to work on big agencies, on big brands as well. So that's how I ended up working in account management and advertising.
So two questions then. So firstly, did you learn more, do you think, setting up social sell and actually being in the trenches and trying to run an agency with a marketing slash social media function, or did you learn more at university? And then the second question is, how did things compare when you actually went to JWT versus what you'd been doing?
Yeah, I think we learned in terms of communication, in terms of pressure build-ups and all that through our practical experience. But again, the fundamentals, what we were trying to achieve or trying to build was from the actual fundamental marketing fundamentals, targeting and segmentation and P's and products and all that as well. So it was kind of a mix. Although, I mean, I don't think we can do both separately. It has to be a mixture of both.
Of course, of course. And did your lecturers and colleagues know that you were running an agency whilst you were learning?
No, no, we were keeping it quiet because we just didn't want to tell anyone at that time. Yeah, I think once we got a few clients, then we started to talk about it as well, because we wanted other clients at that time as well. So yeah, in the beginning we didn't, but once we got a few clients, we started to get our first paychecks or whatever you call it, and then we were quite proud about it.
Yeah, no, you should be. You should be. I think one of the skills that people lack in this industry is that frontline experience, and it can be detrimental, I think, to go straight from university to any agency, let alone a big network agency. So that's that's wonderful. I love that story. And then, so when you went to JWT, did you go knowing you wanted to be an account manager? Because I was talking to Andy Nairn on one of our previous episodes, and we thought that just the term, just the semantics of account management is one that is probably, well, one of few titles in this industry that you could understand, or probably not even understand. You're less likely to not understand it. It's probably a better way of articulating it. Which is why so many people tend to start in an account management role. And then when they can actually look around the agency and see what else is going on, they often sidestep. But did you know early on that you wanted to be an account manager?
No, not really. I wanted to be in the strategy department. I remember at that time, and I used to think of those ideas, and just to pitch a new stuff to the clients as well, to do some research, to work on presentations and develop decks and all that. So I really wanted to be in strategy at that time, but there was no position at that time. And then I was like, maybe this is one of the ways of entering into the advertising world. So I started account management, and then yeah, I mean, it was, I never stopped. It's not like I loved it from the beginning. It took me a lot of time, because it's a lot of pressure, and this was in back in Pakistan, which was quite a different market in terms of pressure, in terms of workload and all that. But yeah, once I got into the groove, I started to love it. Yes.
I've heard you say more recently that account management is extremely hard but simple. In the early days, was it simple or was it extremely hard and complicated?
It has always been extremely hard from day one as well, I mean, there are so many factors that makes it hard. I can try to mention a few as well, because even though I was working in a big network agency at that time as well, but every agency, in fact, every person in the agency has a different way of looking at account management. And in many agencies and countries, account managers are still trying to justify their role and how they add value. And considering I have worked in different markets, and plus now, since I am quite active on LinkedIn, so a lot of account managers reach out to me and tell me their stories and all that. So that's how I heard about it as well. And there are so many factors that make it hard. I think you always have to be on top of everything for every project, for every client, all the time. Sometimes it happens that you're focusing on one client and one project at one time, and then in the next very second you're getting a call from another client who's frustrated about another project. So it's never enough. And when it comes to simple, when I say simple, I mean, I think it's simple because it's not rocket science. And no matter what people say, again, it's not rocket science. Yes, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of common sense. It's a lot of communication and understanding of people, the processes, and marketing in general. But again, it's not rocket science. So I think account managers and myself as well, we just need a lot of passion for the job, a lot of common sense. And I keep on saying about common sense because it is a lot of common sense involved, and the ability to bounce back from setbacks again and again and again, in fact. So yeah, it's quite extremely hard, but it's simple in a sense as well.
You mentioned pre-recording that you were feeling old, but I've clarified that you're far from old, and yet you are very experienced, and you've worked in different territories, and you've worked with all manner of different industries and brands. And then equally, there's a kind of litmus test of sorts, because on LinkedIn you're hearing from people, presumably from all over the world, and certainly in different shaped agencies. What are the consistencies that you hear from them and that you've experienced yourself? Because I'm inclined to agree with you that people have different views and maybe sometimes struggle to justify account management. I know that some agencies will list account management as a line item on a quote and others won't, for example. So that's quite significant, the fact that some list it as a key service and others kind of tuck it away and almost just add it into other services. But what else is there that you've observed?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding of the roles and the roles and responsibilities of account management from the get go. Because what happens is that when you think of an advertising agency, you think of creatives, and now that you've started to think about strategy as well, but account management is never the case. So I think the agencies first need to realize and understand what added value the account management brings, and then only the account management team itself would understand what they have to do. Plus it will also help understand the creative and strategists and the finance team what is the value that account management brings. So I think it's the role of the agencies to bring out the roles of the account management in front of everyone, in fact, not just the client, but in terms of the internal teams as well.
And why do you think agencies don't do that already? I mean, some obviously do, but why do others not?
I absolutely have no idea. Like I still don't understand like why the agencies are not putting so much effort into it. Like there's nothing that comes in and goes out of the agency without the account people. Like all the work, all the communication is through account management. So if they mess up, and it can be a very small thing as well, which can have a detrimental effect, it's going to be a big issue. So it's such a huge responsibility. I think account managers are like the guardians of the, sorry, I was about to say guardians of the galaxy, are guardians of the agency. Account folks, they have so much knowledge of all the agency capabilities as well, because the creatives wouldn't know what else the agency can do. And not that I'm saying that they don't, but most of it not much know about in terms of network agencies as well. So account managers, they recognize when and where the opportunities exist across different clients as well, and not just about across different network agencies. So they have so much information, so much to offer, but it's still overlooked. And that's why, I mean, that's one of the reasons I started to talk about account management on LinkedIn as well. And if you see, my posts are usually for juniors in the industry, so I use simple words, basic topics, because I think the fundamentals need fixing as well, because account managers never receive any formal training as well. And just to add in on to this, that I started this mini series of 3 questions in 3 minutes on LinkedIn, which you might have seen it, where I was asking questions from account leaders, and got such a great response, just to push more conversations, so that the account leaders and the industry starts to talk about it as well.
Do you think at times that, and I say this just from I think the first ever agency I worked at, it was funny because you've got, if you imagine three entities, just quite crudely, of client and then agency, or creatives, if you like, and then you've got account managers in the middle. And sometimes, depending on, I suppose, the culture of the agency that you're at, you often have people that see account managers actually as part of that client, and there can be a real us versus them. But then I'm sure the flip side is true, where you have clients who view the account managers as us versus them as well, and sees them quite understandably as part of the agency. So I feel like you're probably stuck in the middle quite a lot, and your need to have these conversations and manage politics and agendas and all sorts of mess is really, really challenging.
Yeah, yeah, and this happens a lot as well. But you see, what you said is that when we say client partners, the agency, as you said, that the agency thinks that we are there to support only the clients, and the clients think that we are only there to support the agency as well. So it's always in the middle, and we are always trying to justify that no, we are on both sides. We are trying to solve the same problem, and trying to hold the fort together from the client and agency side as well. So it's always a challenge. I mean, and this comes additional to the actual work that the account manager or the account management team is doing, just to justify that we are not for the client, we are not for the agency, we are trying to bring everyone together.
Have you got any advice for managing those difficult conversations, all those different kind of almost political scenarios?
We just need to do a lot of communication on both sides as well. I strongly believe that my creatives and my strategists comes first, and then the client as well. So I think, and it's not just to show my appreciation for my team as well, but I think in the end the creatives and strategists are doing the work as well. So you need to first acknowledge that they are there to support you, and then just a lot of communication from the client side as well, and from the creatives as well, just to bring them all together on one page. It's not rocket science, it's just a lot of communication, a lot of planning on both sides.
You've mentioned rockets twice now. Is that because when you grew up, you wanted to be an astronaut?
I did, yes. And if I was in my actual room where I used to sit, I will show you the picture of the astronaut hanging behind as well.
There's a great quote that you've mentioned on, I think it was an interview. Was it an interview you gave online, or it could have been something you did with Jake? But it was referencing the quote from Jamie Elliott, who's the CEO of Gate, and he says that account management is a little like a football referee. When all is going well, no one notices you, but when shit hits the fan, then all eyes are on you. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I also think you probably get a lot more shit versus praise than other roles in the industry. So you've got to be quite a hardy sort of person to succeed and not let that get to you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I also mentioned about the ability to bounce back, because this will happen again and again. So you have to, just forget about what happened and move on. And I think I read somewhere that you have to let things go so that you can get what you want. And this is when your creative is screaming at you, your client is screaming at you, so you have to calm yourself down first, and then try to calm the situation so that you can move on, right? And that's the hard part.
I want to talk about the process that you've adopted successfully when it comes to briefs. So my background is all I've always been one of those people in the creative departments, and the brief to me, as was put by Gillian Rightford recently, she talked about the brief being that piece, that conversation piece, if you like, between client and agency, and it's that opportunity to kind of understand and articulate the problem and make sure everyone is aligned. What happens when a new brief comes in, and how do you deal with that and making sure the client brief is good, is right?
I think first of all, the account manager, and I keep on saying account manager, which is like everyone, account director, account executive, or client partner, and anyone. There are so many, so many designations. So I try to stick with one. So I think first, the account manager should know in advance that a new brief is coming in. It should never be a surprise. Yes, there might be some briefs that come out of the blue, but it should not be the case most of the time. And I always imagine in that scenario that what my team would think, that I call myself a client partner and I don't know myself what's happening at the client side. Now again, of course, there will be instances that we wouldn't know what's coming in. So if you know the brief is coming in, you should start planning, and planning in terms of updating your team about when to expect and what to expect as well. And then planning from your side as well, what I can do even before the brief, that can help me out and help my team out as well. So for example, if a new product launch is happening, maybe some research on X category examples or past campaigns or some ideas that you would think that maybe that would help. And once you have the brief, then you should dissect it completely. Forget about the putting it on an actual briefing template. First you have to really dissect and understand what exactly is the ask, because sometimes it happens that it's not written what exactly is required. So try to make a sense of it and try to understand what is missing from it. If it is a big, and I try to have a lot of communication even before we actually start working on the brief as well, on both sides. So maybe have a pre-briefing session with your team, or just go through with them before even you actually write the brief as well. And sometimes you can have a pre-briefing session with your clients as well. And I don't think the client would mind if you have the intention of clearing out the doubts before properly briefing session, so that it becomes more fruitful, right? Because it's not a process. Yes, there is a process that once you get a brief, you make a brief and then you send it to the clients, but it's not a hard and fast rule. So you, until and unless you're not clear yourself, then how are you going to make sense of it as well?
Really pleased you said that. You've kind of preempted a question I was going to lead on to about taking responsibility for the brief. So, for example, if the brief comes in directly from the client, and you're that kind of conduit to then pass it on to the creative department. At which point are you saying, "I'm happy with this brief" as the client partner? But you've made it sound like actually, the more collaborative you make it, and the more you kind of preempt the stage where there is an agreed brief, then the more chance there is that it will be exactly what both sides want it to be.
Yeah, and I firmly believe that as an account managers, we always should have a point of view as well, even if it is a brief, or even if you're sending some creative work to the client as well. And if your creative team does not want to share agency recommendation as well, so there is no harm in your personal recommendation to the client as well, so that because you should be on the driving seat, right? So you have to pave a way for them, that this is what I think, because I have worked on account blah 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 and all that. So I think that this would make more sense for the client. So uh, you really need to have a point of view, you really need to have a collaborative approach for any work that you do. in agency.
With the inevitable caveat of it depends, have you got an opinion over over who should write the brief, the client or the agency?
I think, I have worked in agencies where we are fortunate to have a strategy department who writes the creative brief. But I think from the client side, you do not expect a creative brief, right? So that would be more of a business mindset of a briefing where you have the goals, where you have the problem from the client side as well, and then you have the business goals as well, and then how do you articulate as well from your side in terms of the creative brief. And that's the beauty of account management as well, that I'm saying beauty but it's not, but every agency has a different way, and whenever the agency is different, it's the account management which mostly is different. So sometimes the account managers would write the brief, the creative brief. Sometimes there is a proper strategy department who writes the creative brief. But then again, it's it's the account manager who adds that last bits of it as well to make it a proper creative brief. So it depends, as you said.
No, but there's a lot more context around that. And I, I know it's just semantics in some senses, but I think semantics is also really, really important because it can lead to so much confusion and misinterpretation. But have you got a preference between the title of account manager or account management and client partner?
I think account management is a great way of putting at it. When we say client partner, and I love the way it makes sense because you're literally the account client partner, but then again you're also the agency partner as well, which I think is missing from client partner. And again, it's not about the title, but when you're constantly hearing in the agency as well that where's the client partner, who's the client partner on this. So it just makes subconsciously, maybe the team would think that you're towards more for the client and less for us as well. So I think account is a client, and management is everything to do with management in general as well. So I personally think that account management is a great name.
Time, weather, and
We interrupt this podcast to announce that we will never interrupt this podcast with ads. Ads that awkwardly nudge you to contact the pod's host Giles Edwards on 01189 952 007. Only the other day, some pod listening companies did just that, calling for guidance on strategy and brand identity. But we're not asking you to do that. Nope. Anyway, back to the show.
And finally, brand purpose. Let's talk a little bit about brand purpose. What a load of fucking nonsense brand purpose is, yeah?
Oh, the godfather of marketing, Mark Ritson, telling it like it is. Not what we were after. Hang on.
I've got a few listener questions for you, Faizan. So, asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger, but that's not stopped us asking. So, we've got a question from Josh Steele. I mean, Josh has actually kind of been quite sneaky here because he's got two questions in. But if you could go back in time and set the job spec for good, what would you change about account management? Also, what's the most efficient way to do timesheets? Still struggling, to be honest.
Yeah, me too, Josh. Me too. I mean, I think I wouldn't change anything because the issue is that every agency, as I mentioned, big or small, has their own way of working to a number of reasons as well. And some agencies have a creative department and a strategy and an account management. Some agencies have just the account management slash strategy department slash project management department, and then there is creatives as well. So I think usually the account management is the department that is mostly different in terms of ways of working. And as I mentioned, that that's the beauty of it as well. You learn a lot as well, and in future you will definitely this will definitely help you because you would have a lot more sense of the strategy, a lot more sense of the project management and the actual account management as well. But each agency, I think we just need to define the roles and responsibilities in the beginning, so it is clear for everyone that what is the role that the account management is going to bring for our agency, for this client specific as well, because there are bigger clients as well who have different needs as well. And when it comes to timesheets, I think I'm the last person to ask about timesheets. I mean, I love timesheets, but I just hate filling timesheets. But I think timesheets gives valuable data as well if you fill it properly, if you try to dissect it properly as well. But I think, again, I'm not the right person, but if you think, if you set a time every day or even an alternate day or whatever suits you, fill it, that would be the most efficient. uh, we have a weekly, not a weekly, but bi-weekly reminder in our diary as well, for like 5 minutes. That's where we have to do it, and we just don't ignore that's about it.
You articulated that really well. That you don't, you love timesheets, but you hate filling them in. I think there's a sense that what they ultimately give you is significant. As an agency, we actually went without timesheets entirely for about a decade, and we've only recently reintroduced them to the agency. And I think I said on Twitter or somewhere the other day that it's like introducing a total twat to your best friends, because it feels bad to say, here's timesheets, this is now what you need to do, when you've historically not had to do them. And yet, as you say, the intelligence that it gives you, with the caveat of, but assuming they're accurate, is significant. So for commercial reasons, they're important, but they do seem to be this kind of noose around people's neck at the same time.
Yeah, and again, I think I just want to add here that timesheets are not to show the agency that how much work you're doing. I think once, if that is sorted, that it's not for that purpose. It's just to understand how much time we have spent, even if you're not charging hourly or or whatever. But at least you have to understand what the amount of work that you are spending, the amount of time you're spending on each as well. And there are I think there are quite a few project management slash timesheets and workflow management tools as well. I found core, which is cor, which is super amazing. I mean, I had a demo as well. They give a lot of insights already. You don't have to do anything, you just fill those, and then you get a lot of information from it. And Basecamp is also one of those.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of them out there, but I think that's another key point you make there, that they're good for managing and understanding costs, not necessarily the value you bring or that you trade. Question 2 is from the industry agony aunt, Auntie Gillian Rightford, and Gillian asks, do you think there's still a role for account management, or could it be replaced by a duo of project management and strategy?
I don't think account management will ever or should ever go away. I think project management is specific to delivering the actual stuff. When you get out of the stuff and the deliverables and all that, strategy is aligning the goals and actions and plans and all that stuff. And account management, as I said, that it's literally that holds the fort as well. So someone should be there to solve your problems and tell you that everything is going to be all right, so the team can focus on the actual work. Someone, as you said, that calm the storms as well. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lot of panic as well, and strategy needs a lot of time as well. So if a strategy slash account or slash project management person does that, then he or she will struggle with all of those as well. So account managers, I think they should be on the driving seat that takes everyone to their respective destination, safe and sound.
And perhaps it also depends on the size of the agency, right? Those types of hybrid roles.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the agency in Pakistan called Social Cells, because I think they had a photographer who was an account manager as well.
Yeah, they are a different league, so yeah, they're allowed.
So the final part of the interview then is our 4 pertinent poses that we put to all of our guests. Starting with number 1, what advice would you give to your younger, I want to be an astronaut self?
I think I would advise myself to be more social. I was kind of introvert, so it was an issue for me in the beginning. It took me some time to be more social. I think that would have definitely helped me from the beginning. Also, I have 2 advices. So I think also take risks, which sounds a cliche, but I think it's super important, which I'm learning even now as well, that you have to take risk, you have to learn new things every day, like crypto and metaverse or AI or anything at all. I know that every most of the agency people like to bash about it, including myself, but I think there's no harm in learning about it. And I'm not saying to go all in, but at least you should know about it, and try to understand what's happening in the industry, in the world as well. Even if your client will never do it, but at least you should know about these new shiny toys.
Yeah, I like that second piece of advice. And you've mentioned doing the research for today. You talk a lot about mindset, and it's something that I've praised Colin Lewis especially for over the years, because he seems to centre on mindset a lot. And there's some brilliant advice that you've given centred around that. But your point then about actually taking the time to look into these things, I think is important. I remember talking, this was ages ago, and I've referenced him before, I think, on past episodes when I spoke to Frederick Halberg, and he says quite rightly that marketers are all part magpie, and the new shiny thing is interesting, and we should allow ourselves and allow that mindset to want to explore it. And then of course, if we want to bash it because it's not appropriate and it's not suitable for a particular client, then fine. And you do have to be careful, because there's so many absolutes out there where people claim the future is this, the future is that. In most instances, it might not be, but in some it might. And you're never going to know about those few instances where it could well be the future if you're just going to dismiss it entirely.
Of course, yeah, true.
If you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why?
That is my favorite. So I think ego would be the most important thing. I think it is definitely ruining our industry. You might have seen on Twitter as well. So most people in our industry call themselves experts, and I'm not doubting that. I'm sure they are, but they don't want to listen to anyone else as well. So you might be an expert, but others can also have a point of view or a different way of looking at it as well. So um, I remember Luca, who is a friend of mine on Twitter. We started calling it brand splaining. When someone explains to you what brand is, even though you didn't ask for it, and plus you're saying exactly the same thing in just different words, but people would still not agree to it. And then we realized that someone already has came up with this term, so we're not the founders. Also, I think ego in our day to day work as well. Some clients have ego, even though we are literally helping them achieve their business goals. Even internal agency people have ego towards each other, and I'm not it comes from different cultures that I've worked on as well, so I've seen it a lot as well. Because in the end you're literally working together for the same brand, in the same team, and so we all need each other, but we still have ego. I have no idea why is that. I think I'm extremely fortunate to have an amazing team right now, and we actually work together, which is amazing, and a blessing, definitely a blessing.
And I suppose due to the types of work that you would do and the size of the teams and brands that you work with, that chain of people can be so significant that the chances of eliminating ego altogether is probably close to none, whether it's client side or supplier side or agency side. Have you got any tips for how people can kind of navigate round problems to do with ego?
I think we just need to, and I think it should come from the senior management, from the client and agency as well, that we are all working together. We all have one mission as well, and every person, every department has a strategic or maybe a specific role to play to achieve that business goal. So we need to respect and move towards the goal, rather than fighting over or having. It's not a drama that we are having, so it's like proper work, so we need to focus on the work itself, and keep our ego at home.
Now, number three, are there any books that you can recommend to our listeners?
To be honest, it's extremely hard for me to read books, and I've been trying hard to reach and catch up on a lot of books. So I think I'll just name a couple of books which I have read recently. In fact, I'm still reading a few of them. So First is good strategy, bad strategy, which is amazing if you really want to understand strategy. It has a number of examples. I think strategy is one of those terms that we everyone uses in a different way. I've seen people say strategy when they actually mean objectives, or when they actually mean creative rationale as well. So I think that's a good start for anyone. Then I'm also reading a book called Me Talk Pretty One Day, which is memoirs of David Sedaris. He's super funny. He has a sarcastic tone, which I really love. So you will actually laugh out loud reading his book. And the third, which I have to read, I haven't even started. I think that's the Mark Pollard Strategy Is Your Words. So yeah, I mean, I haven't read it, but that's my next reading list.
Nice. It looks beautiful, that book. That it's a hardback, right?
I just need to mention one thing. The first episode that I heard of your podcast was Nick Ellis, and I absolutely loved it.
Oh, sorry about that.
It wasn't the best.
They get better.
Yeah, I think he touched upon creative brief, and I endorse it completely. I forgot to mention it earlier as well. I think I would really like you to add it in the link, because I think he has made a lot of sense, surprisingly, about creative briefs and everything. So I think definitely everyone should hear that episode.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm pleased you bring that. Actually, I might edit all of that out and just, I don't like to. I'm only joking. It's a wonderful episode, and I think I've clarified this before, but just for the record, we actually have just completely nicked the idea or the title of client partners from Nick and Halo. Because we found it was helpful as a way of articulating what the title was to clients, but also justifying their involvement and justifying why they exist on an estimate and on a final invoice, because their work is so critical. So I was really interested when I asked you earlier about that difference in semantics between client managers and account management, and I'm still slightly torn. And I accept the fact that one isn't necessarily right and the other's wrong. I think it's horses for courses, and it happens to help us. But Nick gave a brilliant talk about client partners / account management at Z Melt a few years ago, which you no doubt seen too. So I recommend everyone links to that as well. And then we like to dedicate every episode to someone, and we bestow that honour to our guest, who has to give their reason why.
Yes, so I have thought about it. I have actually two dedications, if I may. One is to my friend Basit Abasi, who I mentioned in the beginning as well. We started this, billion-dollar agency called Social Cell back when we were studying. I moved on, but he kept on going. He now has a full team and has done some amazing work. He's a great marketer and a great partner as well. And Secondly, I would like to dedicate this to all the account managers who are struggling and don't know what to do because they never received any formal training. Because I have been through that as well, so I really understand their struggles and pressures as well. So, and I get so many messages from struggling AMs around the world, which is surprising. I never thought that I would be so popular. I would just ask them to, please keep on going and keep trying your best and learn every day as well. And the last thing is that if ever anyone talks down on you, be it client or internal team, and I know this happens a lot, again, because I have worked in different markets as well, so please raise your voice and speak to your management there and then. No one should be allowed to bully you, which is very surprising. I don't know why this happens. You might not have heard of it, but it still happens a lot in agencies around the world. um, no one should be allowed to bully you. We are not saving lives here. It's just fucking advertising. So just chill.
So, as a final call to action, everyone listening can head over to this episode. There'll be lots of links covering everything we've discussed in the last hour. I'm hoping also, Faizan, that we can link to a lot of your LinkedIn posts because they're hugely valuable, not least for people who are wearing the hat of account managers, but also anyone within the industry, because I think it really does help understand the role and just probably makes us better for that. But how else can people get more Faizan Ali?
I think I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I am somewhat active on Twitter as well. I open Twitter every day for a couple of minutes and then shit post and then move on. But yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out to me, definitely on LinkedIn, you can always message and I always reply.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to talk.
No, thank you so much for inviting me on the show. You have an amazing guest list with proper legends of the industry, and then there's me. So thank you for that.
And Nick, don't forget.
And Nick, yeah.
No, I've really enjoyed it, mate. Finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share and review the podcast. It helps massively. Keep the questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online or email hello@calltoaction.co.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try and I try and I try and I try.